If your body shop recommends that you invoke the appraisal clause, what happens next? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Airing of Grievances. My name is Eric Reamer, and as you can see, Rob is not here again this week, but that's okay because I brought the big guns. That's exactly right. We called in one of our longtime friends, David Smith from Auto Damage Experts, to talk to us about the appraisal clause. And if your body shop recommends that you invoke your appraisal clause because your insurer is not paying you what you think you're due, well, David Smith is a guy that you really need to know. David, hello, my friend. Happy Saturday to you. So
Happy
nice to
Saturday
have
to
you
you.
with us. And ladies and gentlemen, happy Saturday to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us. It means the world that you have taken time out of your day to join us for ours. Now, David, we're going to talk a little bit about that appraisal clause process. But before we do, tell us a little bit about you and Auto Damage Experts, please.
So my name is David Smith. I'm with Auto Damage Experts. Been doing this since 2008. I'm third generation in the collision repair industry. My father does the same thing. He's a little bit more retired now, though, fishing and enjoying life. He's down in Florida. I'm up in Oregon. It's a family business on both sides of the country. And the reason why we do this is because we want to help shops be better and customers be made whole. That's always been our mission.
Yeah, it's a noble mission indeed, and you're good at it. I know that many, many times we have called upon you and your business to help out some of our guests, and your record speaks loud and clear for itself. So, David, as I was talking to Rob earlier this week, he was telling me that this guest came in, and this is a guest that is very close to him, and of course, he wanted the very best service. The insurer was $6,000 short of the actual value of the estimate that our body shop, Nyland's Collision Center, wrote, and that we were at an impasse. They simply couldn't go any higher, wouldn't go any higher.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so Rob recommended to his friend that they invoke the appraisal clause. And in the process of doing that, and folks, we've got plenty of videos upon the topic of the appraisal clause, so you can check those out in the playlist later. But when you do that, when a shop hands off total control of the account, if you will, to somebody like you, an independent appraiser, who is on one of two sides on the appraisal clause process, and I'm going to ask you to kind of walk us through that in a minute. Rob used these words: "It's a gamble to pass it off to somebody else, right? Because you just never know how it's going to end. All the more reason that you need somebody who is A, independent, and B, really good at what they do." And so that's kind of why he reached out to you. But David, kind of give us set the scene for this case. You know it well, better than I do, and help us understand what is the process from the moment that Rob says, "I can't do anymore," to the invoking of the appraisal clause. What does that entail?
So when you choose your repair facility, you choose them for several different reasons, but hopefully it's because they're the ones that are most qualified to repair your vehicle
Yeah.
properly and thoroughly. The insurance company's responsibility is to pay for those repairs as necessary. They don't want to overpay, but they shouldn't be trying to underpay either. They should be paying for a proper repair. One of the problems that consumers run into is that the insurance carrier doesn't know what a proper and thorough repair is. They just know what they're allowed to pay and not allowed. Where the repair facility owns all the liability of that repair. So if they're doing their due diligence and they're reading through the procedures, they understand what they have to do to complete a thorough and proper repair.
Yeah.
And that's where you get this pull. That's where you get this variance between the two. It's not uncommon for us to see repair differences between $4,000 to $10,000,
Oh,
where the client may be looking at paying $6,000 out of their pocket, or they may be looking at the shop not doing some operations because the client doesn't have the money to pay for it. Now, obviously, the shop doesn't want to sign off on repairs that aren't proper and thorough, complete.
they have a liability, right?
So you have some shops that would just refuse those jobs if the client can't afford to pay the difference. And it's much more common today than it was 5 years ago. We've seen a drastic different strategy from the carriers and the way they're trying to handle auto claims. And we've seen a drastic difference in strategy from the shops. You have two schools of thought, I should say, for shops. The ones that are going to do the repair the proper and thorough way, regardless of who's paying the bill. And then you have the other shops that have agreements and negotiations with the carriers. They've agreed to do the work for less money and not a thorough and complete repair as per the manufacturer.
Now, let me just interrupt you really quickly because you used the phrase carriers, and I know what that means, but just for our audience, just to clarify, you're referring to the insurance companies.
Correct. They call them the insurance carrier because they're the ones carrying the policy.
Yeah. Got it.
So when we purchase those policies, nobody reads through them. Not the insurance agent, not the consumer. Unfortunately, you only find out how good your policy is or how bad it is when you have to use it.
Yeah.
And most people aren't prepared for that. You know, the average is every 7 years for a claim. That's how often people use their insurance. And the process 7 years ago was much different than the process today.
Yeah.
And 7 years before that, it was drastically different even more. So that's part of what we run into on a daily basis because we're dealing with this every day. We deal with several different insurance carriers. We deal with several different types of shops in several different states throughout the country. And the idea is just to help bridge that gap to make it manageable for the shop, the consumer, and help the carrier pay what they're supposed to be paying for proper and thorough repair. We do appraisal clauses on both sides. So we do them for carriers as well. As a good carrier should want to resolve that claim too. And they may have questions. They may not have the knowledge or the understanding of what a proper and thorough repair is. And they'll get us involved in those cases too.
So let me just kind of back up because it's my understanding that when somebody invokes the appraisal clause, that the process, yes, they make a phone call to an independent adjuster, the consumer does, right? And finds a way to hire somebody who can make that appraisal. And then the insurer also has supposed to be an independent appraiser, right?
Correct. They should select their own. Yep.
And then those two appraisers do their thing, come up with a number, a value for the repair. And then what happens if they don't agree?
So if we don't agree, we have to make sure we're arguing the same facts. That's number one. Are we talking oranges to oranges? Are we actually looking at the same parts? Are we looking at the same procedures? Do we have a good understanding of what those procedures entail? I mean, there's a lot of employees at insurance companies that don't understand how a quarter panel is installed, or what an apron is or isn't, or where it may have to go, or why do you have to do this or do that to do this part. Some of that is education and explanation. Now, one of the beautiful things about today compared to 15 years ago, we now have written procedures of why we have to do what we have to do. So that's the first thing we do. We produce the procedures as necessary to help educate and to inform the other appraiser why our sheet has what it has on it. And we ask them to do the same thing if there's something we have questions.
Okay.
And then we can negotiate once we have a basic agreement of facts. Now we can negotiate and try to reach our.
All right. And does it ever happen where you don't agree, that you see things from opposite corners and there's just no resolution to it?
Absolutely. So when we're dealing with the appraisal clause for total losses, because it's the same process, only about 5% of those ever have to go to an umpire.
A what?
When we're dealing an umpire, who's a third appraiser. So we'll both agree on who the third appraiser will be. then he'll ultimately make the final decision if we can't come to an agreement.
I got you. Okay.
And so, and the total loss, we're able to do that. Only 5% of the time does it have to go to an umpire. And appraisal clause for repairability, I would say we're at about 25, 30% of the time it's going to an umpire. Because sometimes these differences are so dramatic that the appraiser for the carrier, the insurance carrier's appraiser, they're independent, has a hard time being allowed to write what he needs to write because he has been given a profile or ceilings to some values that he's not allowed to mess
Oh, time out.
with. Mm-hmm.
What?
Mm-hmm. So
they're supposed to be
independent.
but they
So independent to them means we do this work for multiple carriers, multiple insurance companies.
I see.
That's what independent means to them.
Huh.
So one of the unique things about what I do is almost every client that I have an appraisal clause with, that's the first time I've done any work for them. If I'm on the insurance side of this industry and I'm predominantly on that side, I may work with the same carrier, insurance carrier, 5 times a week. Much different facts.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a reality there too we have to look at. Now we can hold them account and say, you're not allowed to use a DRP profile. You're not allowed to use this. You're not allowed to use that.
Okay.
But those are some of the limitations that they're being faced with.
I'm going to stop you again because you used another phrase that we have not introduced yet. It's easy for you because you do these 3-letter acronyms in your sleep. You said DRP. That is a direct repair program or partnership.
And I love how they say that.
Have with their insurer, right?
Correct. Preferred provider network would be another way we would look at it, right?
Yeah.
So they've reached an agreement with the carrier, with the shop, to perform work at a certain labor rate and to charge so much on certain operations and to prioritize repair over replace or aftermarket over new, those type of things. That's examples. So insurance companies have profiles like that set up for their direct repair partnership or program, but they also have profiles set up like that for their independent appraiser network.
I've learned something new today.
So they may have them import their profile directly into their estimating system. And so what a lot of times we have to do what's called a labor rate override. They have to concede the labor rate dollars in a separate line of the estimate because they're not allowed to actually change the labor rate in the profile of the computer.
Wow. Okay. So they call you, you get involved. The 2 appraisers.
Let me walk through a process. Let me walk through the typical scenario.
Please.
So you take your vehicle to your repair facility and they write an estimate. We're going to say the estimate is $10,000. That's for easy math. The insurance company comes out, looks at the car, and they write an estimate for $4,000 because that's what their adjuster sees. Maybe it's a photo estimate. Maybe it's an actual physical inspector. Maybe it's an independent third party writing the estimate. Or maybe it's done via telephone, whether you've emailed them the estimate and they go ahead and just write their own and send it back. But there's a $6,000 disparity between the 2 repairs. What do you do? Well, your shop may recommend somebody like me as a third party appraiser, or you may look upon it yourself. When the insurance company says we can't do anything, you have to go through the appraisal clause. And then you would find somebody like me and call me. First thing we will do is we will ask for the facts, review the estimates, consult the client on what the expectation should be, time-wise, dollar-wise, what's going to be involved, if it's better for them to go ahead and pay for the repairs out of pocket and then recover their money later, or are we going to wait, get the monies before we complete the repair? These are all things that we want to go through in ahead of time. Some of these repair appraisals can take up to 6 months, if even longer, if it's a huge disparity. And we had one several years ago where car had traces of fentanyl in the vehicle, and the insurance company was insistent on repairing the vehicle. It took us 9 months, I believe it was 9 months, to get them to actually declare the vehicle a total loss before that claim got resolved. So we want to go through that with the client ahead of time and kind of just coach them through that so they know what to expect as they're going through it.
Yeah.
And then that way they're much more involved, much more engaged, much more educated about the process. So once they've made that decision, we then send a letter of rep to the client to sign, and we send that to the carrier because we want to be the ones to notify them that we're invoking the appraiser clause. There's some things that get triggered when you do that. Different carriers have different wording in their policies. We want to look at that ahead of time too, because some of them will play games or have different strategies on how they want to handle appraisal clauses for repairs. So when we notify them, we give them 3 to 5 days to notify us who their opposing appraiser is going to be, who they selected. And then me and that other appraiser, we set the ground rules at the beginning, who the umpire is going to be if we go that route, and what do we expect from each other, documents, photos, exchanging information, etc. Then we evaluate each other's appraisals. And then that's when we start going through making sure we have all the facts consistent and straight with each other. Also start negotiating breach resolution. Most of these get resolved within 10% of the final bill.
Of the final bill for
If it was $10,000,
I see.
for example, and it was a $6,000 difference, I would expect it to get resolved with a $600 difference at the end.
Wow.
The one that you were talking about with Rob, that was a little bit more successful than that. I think we had a $340 difference out of the whole amount that was out of the $6,000.
Nonetheless, I mean, money well spent if you're looking down the barrel of $6,000 out of pocket.
Correct.
Right? So
Correct.
I love that.
Well, and you pay the premiums for that particular car. So it's really just, you had to pay a little bit more money out of your pocket to make sure your insurance carrier did what they're supposed to.
Right.
Now, in some states, like my state, Oregon, which is very unique, if my client prevails by $1, they have to reimburse my client my entire fee on top of it.
Oh,
That's pretty unique.
yeah.
We're having more states try to get that in play. But as you can imagine, there's some friction there with the insurance carriers themselves.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that being the case here in Colorado.
Unfortunately.
And I know that, there is one insurance carrier, and I don't mind naming them. We've named them many times before, State Farm, that does not include the appraisal clause for repairability in their policy terms. They will honor an appraisal clause if the car is deemed a total loss and they are disparaging on the value of the vehicle.
That's been correct for many years.
Yeah.
There is some movement on that now.
Really?
We're seeing some legislature in Texas, legislature in Washington State, where that's no longer going to fly.
Really?
That they're going to be they're going to have to cover appraisal clause repairabilities because we're seeing so much disparity between the insurance carrier estimates and the body shop repair.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and as you know, because I know that you are a regular viewer of the Airing of Grievances on Saturday mornings, where we chat live with you during the premieres, and I know that we talk so much about the push down from above from the insurance carriers to the shops. The shop is, we didn't get in the accident, right? We're the ones who are trying to facilitate making you whole. They're the ones who should be paying to make you whole. And as you mentioned, you've probably paid your insurance premiums without fail for however many years, right? It really doesn't matter whether it's a day or a year.
Well, it's illegal not to. You're going to drive. It's illegal not to have insurance.
Yeah.
So you have to have insurance. It's death and taxes and insurance, right? I mean, that's reality. But here's the thing. We didn't choose our insurance. And we're not the ones who got in the accident. That's true. But the shop ultimately is the one who has to deal with it.
Yes.
And a big part of this is because so many shops don't educate and inform their consumer is why they can get away with it.
Right.
Because so many consumers aren't being informed or educated or brought into the situation.
Yeah.
My shop, when I was running the shop 17 years ago, our goal was to just take care of everything for the client.
Yeah.
Much like Rob was when I first met Rob. I didn't want the client having to mess with anything.
Right.
Problem is we're doing a disservice to the consumer because we may not always be there to help them. They may be at the mercy of another shop or another carrier at another time. And if we don't educate them and inform them when we have that opportunity,
Yeah.
then we may regret that later.
Which is the very reason that we started this series 236 episodes ago, right? And the very reason that we do what we do is, we tell people we got here as quickly as we could. And it is our mission in the world to educate the consumer, the guest, so that they know what their options are. We're not telling them they have to do one or the other, although we probably emphasize more often that we would never do one side of things than the other. But it's all about the quality of the repair, the safety of the repair, and ultimately, if you've paid all your life for a policy that should be, you should be in good hands, you should have good neighbors, they should follow through. And it is ever so often not the case.
As a repairer, you have a tremendous amount of responsibility to the consumer,
Yeah.
to your staff, and to your company,
Yeah.
right? My philosophy has always been: number one, do what's right for the car; number two, do what's right for the customer; number three, do what's right for the shop; and then number four, for the employees, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And insurance carriers down there somewhere like 7 or 8 or 9, they're part of the process.
You bet.
Because I want to have respect, and I want to have, I want to have trust, and I want to have a good relationship with everybody I work with, including insurance carriers.
Agreed.
I can't compromise the car, can't compromise the customer, and I can't compromise the shop. Because if I do, then all of that falls apart.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So by making the car number one, it gives me credibility when I'm talking to the consumer and when I'm talking to the carrier, because I'm going based off what the manufacturer said needs to be done. It's not my, engineering background or understanding or training. It's what the manufacturer says.
Right.
And those engineers went through and did all the testing. I didn't. Yeah. Right. So if I follow that and I'm able to produce a copy of that to the carrier and to the consumer, that should be the end of it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of shops out there who don't even access that information.
Yeah.
And that's not an excuse, by the way, for those poor shops, as I have demonstrated over 100 of those shops. They will be held liable for it if we find it. So we'd rather do it right the first time. We want to make sure that we inform and educate the consumer and the insurance carrier. That also helps establish value for us, who we are and what we do. And so when we go through that process, that's why they remember us later too.
Yeah, well, that makes you the MVB, the most valuable business in my book, for a lot of reasons. Let me go back and ask you. You mentioned earlier about the time that it could take, and if I understand correctly, the timeline for the repair that started this conversation was fairly quick, right? The resolution was fairly quick. Is that accurate?
Yeah, this one took right at a month.
Yeah.
I believe it was 4 weeks. We had a little bit of delay at the very beginning of the insurance carrier hiring an appraiser. But once we got through that, me and the other appraiser went pretty quick.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest problem we have is there's only a handful of appraisers that are qualified to do this work on both sides. That's really, there's a supply and demand issue too. So them trying to find a qualified appraiser is difficult in some cases, because if they're not qualified, they're not going to want to go up with somebody with my background or somebody with extensive knowledge, because they won't perform very well.
Sure.
And it can be problematic for their relationship with their insurance carrier, because they have to explain why they agreed to what we agreed to. Sometimes they're not happy about doing that. And I've actually had appraisers tell me they've lost accounts because of it.
Well, and there you see, from the consumer's point of view, the viewers of this video, you're probably seeing and hearing things in this conversation that you never even imagined, but that do go on behind the scenes that drive the process, right? Do you ever see, and listen, I want to qualify this by saying we're not anti-insurance. We are pro-consumer, right? Like you, we are pro the proper repair for the vehicle. We always here at Nyland's Collision Center, we always go to the manufacturer procedures, and
Mhm.
those are the documents that we supply to the insurer when we're doing the original estimates and the back and the forth, the supplementals, and all of that. But that said, there has been a lot of sneaky business going on. And do you ever encounter the insurer? You mentioned that it took a little while for the insurer to come up with an estimator uh,
Mhm.
or an appraiser. Um, do you ever find that that is delayed, whether intentionally or otherwise, more than it should be?
Absolutely. And specifically since 2020, we've seen certain insurance carriers reduce staff significantly, have a tremendous amount of turnover,
Yeah,
have people that aren't really qualified or aren't able to keep up with the load they have. And that creates some of those issues too. Some insurance carriers, their philosophy is to delay, deny, defend. So they will put it off and put it off, and we have to be on top of them. There's certain things that we do to try to help that. I'll include the consumer on every email that we send to them, even
yes,
though they remove the consumer on every email they send back.
that's right.
But it's just a way to help the consumer know what's going on. Because again, they're the ones who chose that insurance company. They're the ones who write them a check every year or every 6 months, whatever it is in your area.
Right.
They have a right to know. And they should let their agent know if they're unhappy, if they have an agent, right? So those are things that you can do to help expedite that.
Yeah.
But some carriers are more organized or better at it than others. And sometimes it does seem like that's by design. Sometimes it could just be incompetence or overwhelm.
Mm. All right. Well, uh, I think the other thing that we had talked about before we got started was the fact that things are constantly changing, and it seems like at an escalated rate these days. Can you kind of give us a little background on that and what you deal with?
Certainly. So, appraisal clause for repairability was pretty rare 10 years ago, extremely rare. In the last 5 years, we've seen it much more commonplace than it used to be. And I'm seeing it from shops of all different types. I'm seeing it from very high end quality shops like Nylons, but I'm also seeing it from the mom and pop small shops too are starting to use it because they have to, right? They don't have an option. So we're seeing that take place, but we're also seeing insurance carriers. Um, I know I don't like to name names of insurance carriers as I'm going through this,
Okay.
but we see some of them try to fight the appraisal clause. They don't want to participate in it. They hate somebody else being able to write out the amount that check's going to be at the end, as opposed to themselves because they lose all control. And we
Sure.
also see some carriers, the claim rep to love it, because now they're not responsible for the dollar amount. They don't get in trouble for it because now a third party they didn't do it. So you see different reactions from different carriers. You'll see some of them try to make you go through hoops. That's where we have to step in.
Yeah.
We had a client, um, it's a very large carrier that we invoked the appraisal clause, and they kept trying to tell her what she had to prove to them why she had the right to do that. Well, we sent them a copy of the policy. We sent them the copy of the state law. And eventually oh, okay, yes, I'm sorry. Supervisor took the claim over and we got everything handled very quickly.
Yeah, but hold on. They know because they're the ones who wrote the policy. They know what's in that policy. That seems to me to be shenanigans. That seems to be delay tactics and maybe even some bully tactics on top of that.
Yeah, never. What's that saying about never give it to malice if it could be incompetence? What's that saying? I'm trying to remember that right now.
I don't know what it is, but
Never attribute it to malice what could be attributed to incompetence. I think that's the right thing.
wow.
The reality is, I don't know. It's hard for me to see. I can't see the script they're reading off the screen
Yeah.
or what they're copying and pasting and emailing me. Very well maybe intentional. It doesn't matter. I still have to get the claim result, right?
Yep.
So we try to get in there and be as we try to be as direct and as efficient as possible when we're going through these. It doesn't benefit me any more, them taking longer. Certainly doesn't benefit the consumer. And really, at the end, it doesn't benefit the carrier either.
Yeah.
They've lost plenty of money because they did delay these things out too long, and it's caused other problems. But we try to be as efficient as possible.
Well,
It's just the consumer doesn't know the process because they haven't been exposed to the process. Most insurance agents are not familiar with the process. So until they go through it, it's really an unknown for them.
yeah.
By the time we're done, it's pretty funny. But I will tell you this: I probably have the highest rate of repeat clients in appraisal clause than I do any other aspect of my business. Because once they know it's there, they don't mess with anything else.
Yeah.
Let's just go through appraisal clause and be done with it.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise us at all, and it may surprise some of our viewers. And therein lies the very reason that we're having this conversation this morning, and it's because you don't know what you don't know. And like I said, we got here as quickly as we could. We are adding new information on these topics. Sure, we've talked about the appraisal clause before, but we've never gone into this kind of a deep dive on what the actual process looks like, what your experience is behind the scenes. And I hope that you never have to. But if you do, if you have an incident where unfortunately you get into an accident and you need to, your insurer, and by the way, I want to circle back to this on which insurer are we talking about? But let's just say you get into an accident and you need to invoke the appraisal clause. That's the thing that it's better to have this knowledge. It's better to know David Smith from Auto Damage Experts before you need him, and to know that he's one that we here at Nyland's Collision Center trust for referral. And so let's go back and talk about that though, David, because I think that's the one thing we kind of skipped over real quick was if somebody hits you and you're not at fault in the situation, and normally I think normally they would go through the insurer of the at fault driver to pay for the repair of their vehicle.
Typically, because it's much simpler. Typically, that's how they used to do it because they would go ahead and cover the rental car. They would go ahead and cover the cost of repairs. You get your car back, you drop off the rental car, you're done, you move on, you go back to life.
Right.
With the short pay issue, you don't have any recourse though if they don't pay for their full repair costs.
Yeah.
You only thing you can do is sue the at fault party at the end for the difference. And that can take time, that can be laborious, and that can be frustrating too.
Sure.
But you do have your own policy that you already paid for. And that's a written contract that they have to abide by. That's the real difference between the two. You have a contract with a company that says they will do this in exchange for the money that you give them.
Right.
So when we go through our own policy, we actually have rights, we have rules that have been established that everybody must follow. When you're going through the third party's insurance company or the at fault party's insurance company, you're not privy to any of that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a big deal and should be factored in as you make the decision of how to proceed.
And that's why the consultation is so important because there's a lot of different factors we have to look at. You may have, if you don't have rental car coverage on your policy, it may just not be able to do that. You might have to do the repairs and then you may have to sue for the balance on top of the diminished value or whatever it may be at the end. Because the rental car these days, car could be in the shop for 30, 60 days, and that can be another $5,000, $6,000 on top of it.
Yeah.
And we want to try to mitigate all of those damages that we can. And that's where the consultation can really come in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
because there's other pieces too. When we're talking about appraisal clause, we're talking about a repair difference or a short pay, as we call it. What is the factors that are causing it? Almost, I would say, probably 30% of all the short pays that I'm seeing are because of calibrations, because the shop doesn't have an invoice yet until they do it. So that's I can kind of explain that to the consumer and kind of make sure everybody's doing what they need to. So that's not an issue at the end. Sometimes it's labor rates. Insurance companies want to pay a prevailing rate as they determined it to be, but the market says something completely different.
Yeah.
You know, a Lexus certified quality repair facility is not going to charge the same as a shop who's not OEM certified by anybody. But they
Right.
shouldn't, right? There's a lot more investment, a lot more training involved. So it's going to cost you more money to take advantage of that. So we can help the consumer with the labor rates. Then we come to parts. A lot of times what we're seeing is the insurance carrier may want to take advantage of aftermarket parts, recycled parts, reconditioned parts. And there's actually position statements from most manufacturers saying we don't allow that, or we don't approve of that, or this or that. So just having a resource for the consumer to know what are we arguing about, what are the differences, that's very helpful to them to have a better picture of what's going on.
Yeah.
As opposed to them just thinking the shops overcharging, they're trying to take advantage of me, or the insurance companies trying to take advantage of me. We can kind of help break that down and tell them where the differences really are. That's where the facts have to be the same.
Yeah.
That's when we have to have that conversation with the other appraiser to make sure that we're actually looking at all the same facts.
Yeah. Now this is so valuable. And David, I'm looking at the time and I know that we've gone a long time, but I want to say thank you, not just on behalf of our audience here, but I know that Rob is ever grateful for your the trust that you have built up with him on the quality of your appraisals, and I know that's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
So
Let me share one thing with you and with the audience. Me and Rob met, got to be 15 years ago, on Facebook. Rob sent me a message, Facebook Messenger back then. And I asked him one simple question. I said, who do you work for? And immediately he said, the guest. And I only know that term because when I was after high school, I worked at Disney and we had to call everybody the guest.
yep.
So when he said that to me, it completely triggered. And I was like, that's awesome, because you'd be amazed at how many shops I talk to and I ask that same question and they say the insurance company.
Yeah.
So that's where we have that shared value that we work for the consumer and we want to do the best work we possibly can. And we want to try to make everybody around us better. Because I've always said if all shops were doing the same quality repair, following the same procedures, our costs would be real similar. The reason why they're not is because most shops aren't doing the proper.
Yeah, that's really well stated. David Smith, Auto Damage Experts, autodamageexperts.com. I want to say thank you so very much for taking time out of your day. Lift a glass with me, brother. And I want to wish you a very happy Saturday. Thank you.
Happy Saturday to you too.
Yes,
Thank you,
indeed.
guys.
And thank you, folks, for tuning in and watching all the way. If you made it all the way to the end of this, I'm pretty sure you're going to love this next video here. We're grateful for your time, and we will check you out again next Saturday.